From Fox 13 Sports, this is Seattle Sports Live.
All right, welcome into a special edition of Seattle Sports Live. It's not actually Seattle Sports Live. This is the On the Sidelines podcast, first episode. I'm your host, Ethan McReynolds, with my co-host, partner in crime, Dante Jackson.
Yep, you can call me D-Jack.
D-Jack, yeah,
Yes.
Let's go. So, hey, we're here. How are we feeling?
Oh, we feeling good. Let's do it.
Yeah, well, we got a lot of Seattle sports to talk about. Let's start with the Mariners. Spring training it's going. They're in the middle of it. Games are already going. A disappointing offseason, I would say. I think that's not a controversial thing to say. What did you sort of think of the offseason coming into this season?
You know, I will admit, I was right along with everybody else. I was disappointed. I was looking for a move. Like, you know, everybody wanted to move, a big bat or two. But as the season has approached and spring training has started, I'm starting to get a little bit more optimistic. I think this team has a chance to compete. And when I say compete, I'm talking about a championship, Ethan. I mean, once you get in the tournament, they have the pitching in place to go ahead and seal a deal. I'm looking for the Mariners to go to the World Series this year.
Well, and it's spring. It's the time for optimism, right? I'm sort of feeling the same way as well. The offseason was absolutely disappointing. I don't think any fan is in the wrong for being upset with the front office and the lack of activity. This team is so close. They missed the playoffs by a game the last two seasons, and they go out and have a couple of, quiet off seasons. You need to strike while the iron's hot. You've got this starting pitching staff on cheap contracts compared to everything else in the league for not an unlimited amount of time. So now is the time to strike if you're the Mariners. But look, just being down at spring training, there's a lot of talent on this roster. You wish there was some more, but this is a team. If they can make it into the playoffs, I mean, they're gonna get busy and they're gonna make some noise.
Now, I've heard the Mariners organization talk about it, Ethan, over the last few weeks. They say, we like the team we have. And I must agree, if everyone plays to the back of their baseball card, you get Julio raking, you get Victor Robles with a full year, a Rosarina gets a full year here. I believe the Mariners can contend. They were one game away. They're right there. They have the pitching. Hopefully we can stay healthy. But I think the Mariners are right there. And like I said before, I think they can go to the World Series.
Well, and that's a good point, bringing up some of the additions. And Victor Robles, he wasn't here for a full year last year. Randy Rosarina, they get him at the trade deadline. Who knows what happens if they have him from opening day like they will this year. So I believe the lineup is better than it was opening day a season ago. But you need some bounce back work from, a J.P. Crawford, a Jorge Polanco, who you traded for last offseason, a Mitch Garver, who you spent not insignificant money on. Mitch Haniger, does he have anything still left in the tank? You're giving him $20 million a year. So
yes. And I mean, it still moves out there to be made. I mean, it's not over. Just because they didn't make one in the offseason doesn't mean they can't make one during the season. And in spring training, it still moves to be made. But if everyone plays to the back of their baseball card and everybody plays to their capabilities, the Mariners are right there, one game out. And once they get in, all the experts agree that they have the pitching to take them all the way. Now, the only thing I do not like is the words that are being used. As a matter of fact, the words that's not being used, and that's championship. It's a mindset, Ethan, and I don't think that mindset is with the Mariners right now. They have to speak it into existence. They have to have that championship mindset because I think they have the pitching staff. They have the young superstars. Once you're in, it's an open season. They can take it. Now, the Mariners are the only Major League team who never been to the World Series. They never been to the World Series. Can you believe that? The only one. And you're still talking about being a consistent winner. No, I want a championship. And that's what you got to speak into existence. Words do matter.
Well, and I think it's difficult for the players when you look at what the front office is doing. It's like, how can you, it doesn't really motivate you much to go out there and say, we're going to win the World Series this year when your one off-season addition is Donovan Solano, plus bringing back Jorge Polanco, who you had on the roster last season. They were really close. You've got this core, the front office, and I would say, I don't know if I want to say the front office, the ownership group is not giving Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollander the resources to be able to go out there and get the impact that they need. So they say. So it's, I completely hear your point, and it is a culture building thing. And we sort of thought it was moving that direction when they made the playoffs in 2022, or was it 23, 22? But the next 2 seasons,
you gotta believe
the front office didn't capitalize on that momentum, and here we are again. Here we go again with the Mariners. Am I going to get my hopes up? I'm choosing to. I love the Seattle Mariners, and I'm gonna get optimistic about this team because there's a lot to be optimistic about. I don't really blame the players though for not being like, we're going to win the World Series. I feel like in the back of their heads there might be a little bit of animosity towards that front office, and Cal Raleigh has spoken on it as well. He's not happy with what the front office is doing. Didn't say that this past offseason, but previously he's made it known. He's like, guys, we got to go win. We got to get better. Now
that's a slippery slope for
a
player to come out and say we need to get better. Cal,
because then they're out the door.
With Cal hitting 210, I mean, he's one of the better catchers in the league. But Cal
Platinum glove.
Cal
34 home runs, 100 RBIs.
Hey, Cal can do better. Cal can do better. When you're hitting closer to 200 and 300, you can do better. And I know this is a new time with analytics and all of that, and he's raking, he put the ball over the fence. I understand that. But at the end of the day, if you're still hitting close to 200, you can do better. So, let's start with you, Cal. All right, you can do better. I don't like players talking about management, and let them do their job. They'll bring the players in. Until then, you as a player, Cal, you have to do what you can do, which is be better. Okay, first and foremost. And like I said, it's a mindset. You got to talk it. You got to speak it into existence. You got to want it. You got to believe it before you can achieve it. You got to talk about that championship before you get there. And once you're there, you only one game away last year. Once you're there, it's open season. It's open for anybody. And I just think being a franchise that's never been there, it's no urgency. Mm-hmm. It has to be an urgency, not just from the organization. It comes down to the players on the field. I mean, organization didn't do anything to Julio the first 3 months of last season when he was cold. Mm-hmm. The organization didn't do anything to these players. They put them in place to be successful, and the players are the ones that failed, if you ask me.
Well, and you got to say that it starts at the top as well, with them, instilling a culture of winning. You see that with the Yankees. You see that with the Dodgers. You see that with these teams, the Cardinals, that are in the playoffs year after year after year. You talk about getting better. What needs to get better is this offense. Are there any, players that you think are set for a bounce back year that didn't really perform last year?
Not as much as a bounce back year as an X factor. And Victor Robles, I'm counting on him. I mean, I love twitchy athletes. I mean, he can run the bases, he can hit, he can field. He has all the tools. I mean, and he finally has the opportunity where a team is counting on him to show up, and I expect him to have a big season. Look out for Victor Robles. I mean, I'm not breaking news here. A lot of people have picked him as their X factor, but I think Victor Robles is set for a great year this year.
Yeah, I like that pick. And with the last 6 weeks of the season, the Mariners offense, when Dan Wilson and his regime, Edgar Martinez, came in, the offense looked really, really good. Who knows if that 6 week sample set is going to transfer over, and that's who the Mariners really are. The front office believes that sort of speaks for the inactivity. But Julio Rodriguez had a really good year, played much better when Edgar Martinez came in, and his philosophy of keeping things simple, just finding barrels, using the full field. I like Julio to be more of the MVP candidate that we know he can be. I'm hoping that it's just going to cut down on the strikeouts overall. I think Edgar is very high on a 2-strike approach, battling up there. And being more selfless for the team, situational hitting as well, moving runners over. Runner on third, less than 2 outs, just hitting a ground ball to the second baseman. That's a run right there. That's valuable for the Mariners when you have the pitching staff that they do. So it's going to be interesting.
It's ironic that the Mariners are counting on the old school Mariners.
Right.
You got Dan Wilson as the manager, and you got Edgar Martinez, in charge of hitting. He's not the hitting coach. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have Kevin Seitzer, the new hitting coach. But, I mean, it's kind of ironic that those two are the two we're leaning on. But, it kind of bothers me that we're leaning on Edgar so much and we're counting on him. He's not playing. Edgar is not playing, y'all. Julio Rodriguez has to do it. Randy Rosarina has to do it. Mitch Haniger has to do it. I mean, as a veteran, maybe coming off the bench, I don't know what the lineup is going to be, but we need to count on these players. It always comes down to the players because they're the ones at the plate. they're the ones on the mound. I truly believe that. We're counting on Edgar a little bit too much. He's not in the batter's box, okay? He can give us a philosophy. He can give us a steady hand. But at the end of the day, Julio Rodriguez has to come in there and cut down those strikeouts.
Yeah, and I think the frustrating part about the offseason is it sort of puts this team in a spot where there is zero margin for error. I mean, any injury could derail this entire season.
You could say that about any team in the MLB. I mean, one injury, you could say that about just about any team.
I would say it's significantly thinner for the Mariners than it is for any other team that has World Series aspirations.
Okay.
And when you talk about margin for error, this bullpen, with the lack of offense, the margin for error was nearly zero last season, and we saw without Matt Brash, they weren't able to hold those one-run leads. Their record in one-run games fell off from a couple of years ago when they were extremely dominant in those games. You've got Matt Brash coming back supposedly in late April. That's what he was telling me and Aaron Levine when we were down at spring training. So that's good. He's ramping up right now. We saw him throwing a couple of bullpen sessions. Gregory Santos apparently, going to be he's no limitations right now in spring training. So hopefully we get to see more Gregory Santos. And Andres Munoz, we saw what he could do last year. He's adding a new pitch, right? Did you see that on social media?
I did.
Yeah,
let's check it out.
Here, let's show you the footage right here. He's adding a kick changeup. Look at Cal Raleigh's reaction to that one. He didn't even know what was coming. That was the first time he'd thrown it. Here he is in a live bullpen session. Cade Marlowe swinging over that pitch. Munoz was saying that he does a good job of getting to two strikes, but he doesn't really have that put-away pitch. Now this looks really promising. 10 inches of vertical break.
It looks great. You're talking about one of the best closers in the game. Mm-hmm. Let's call it what it is. Munoz has been one of the best pitchers in the game. And adding a pitch like that, an out pitch.
He might be better.
Yes,
he can get better. It's scary to think that he might be able to build on his season last year.
He's definitely growing into his game. And I look forward to Santos, Brash, Munoz. If we can get those three healthy all season long, I like the Mariners' chances. The bullpen is set. The rotation is set. All we need is a few bats. And if spring is any indicator, right now it's been 2-3 games in spring training. They're raking. They hitting the cover off the ball right now. And you want to kind of be like, hey, cool off, chill out, save it for the season. But no, just keep going because I think it builds great habits. It builds winning habits. And that's what I think the Mariners need. They need those winning habits. And they say spring training doesn't mean anything. It doesn't convert to the regular season. I beg to differ because anytime you can get hits, anytime you feel good about yourself, anytime you can get those mechanics working and you get hits all over the field, it should translate to the season. It should.
Yeah. Well, I will say, it's not going to be 80 degrees and sunny on opening day a month from Thursday
at T-Mobile
Park. So hopefully they're able to get off to a hot start.
But let me ask you this before we stop with the Mariners. I wanted to ask you about the report that came out saying T-Mobile was one of the worst parks to play in. Breaking news.
It's true.
We already knew that it wasn't a hitter's park.
So we talk about, for years, the Coors Field effect in Colorado, right? Why would a pitcher ever go to pitch in Colorado with the elevation and balls are flying all over the park? The Mariners Stadium last year by StatCast was just as bad for hitters as Coors was for pitchers. Worse. And everybody talks about the Coors Field effect and, Todd Helton's up for the Hall of Fame. Oh, is he just a beneficiary of playing at Coors Field? The Mariners have that on the opposite end of the spectrum, and it's just as bad, if not worse.
Do you think it's hurt their chances in landing some of the free agents that was out there?
If I was, Alex Bregman, looking at a, free agent deal, a shorter term deal, he's got opt-outs after every year in Boston. Why would you take that deal in Seattle? It's a prove-it deal. You want to have a big offensive year to try to get a big payday. Why would you do that in a park that statistically is going to hurt you more than any other ballpark in all of baseball? So it absolutely affects them. And that's why it's frustrating with the front office and ownership not giving Jerry Dipoto and Justin Hollender more resources. You have to pay more money to get hitters to come here. Is that going to result in some bad contracts? Yeah, maybe. Absolutely.
So you have to play the T-Mobile tax. Is that what it is?
That's absolutely what it is. No
Wow.
question. I mean, these are human beings. They can look at the stats. It's not, you're not playing, MLB The Show. You can give a certain amount of money and he's just going to come here. These are human beings. Their agents know what they're coming into. They see the Mariners' slow starts in April, May, and June when the weather hasn't warmed up.
And the prime example, Teoscar
Hernandez.
Hernandez.
Absolutely.
Every time I see him, I cringe. I mean, I was like, where was this?
Yeah.
Where was this when you were here?
Well, and when you have a player, who's as respected as Teoscar is, come out and say the batter eye makes him uncomfortable, and you look at his road versus away splits when he was here, it's hard not to put some weight into that. And hopefully they do sort of look at that the batter's eye out in center field. And I'm down. Turn over every rock. Whatever you have to do to make hitters more comfortable in the box, you got to do it for the Mariners.
It's been a problem since even when they won 116 games. I mean, Mike Cameron complained about that famously. I mean, those players complained about the glare coming off the center field wall. They painted it black. They moved the fences in. They moved them back out.
Mm-hmm.
They've tried everything they can. At some point, it is what it is. And to your point earlier, you have to build your team to your ballpark,
right?
Which is why I like Dan Wilson's style of play, more of the small ball, not trying to
move runners over,
move them over,
be ready, be hard to play
station
against.
to station, do that kind of baseball. It's more than one way to win, and I think the Mariners had the right manager and the right staff in place to make it productive.
Really quick, who do you think's the Mariners opening day starter?
I would have to go with Castillo. I'm a veteran guy. I think he's earned that right. Although Logan Gilbert is right there, he's up and coming. If the Mariners want to pass the torch, I don't have a problem with Logan Gilbert being named the opening starter. But I say you go with the Rock. Slow, steady. I mean, he's been there. He's solid. I think he's earned that right. I would go with Castillo.
I think in a playoff series, I'm going with Castillo for that veteran presence, not letting the moment get too big. You saw in that Blue Jays game, their first playoff game in 20-some years.
Right.
I mean, he was incredible. That's exactly what you need, a tone setter, right?
Yes.
For the regular season, I'm going Logan Gilbert.
Okay.
Personally.
I'm not mad at it.
I'm not
mad at it.
Well, there's not a bad choice. I mean, you could throw Brian Wu out there and it would be incredible. I think a lot of teams would be happy with Brian Wu.
A lot of people saying Kirby, so I mean, you can't go wrong with this staff, which is like just riches. Like, I mean, everywhere you got a great arm, and that's the frustration with the Mariners right now, is you feel like these arms are going to waste. One of the best pitching staffs in MLB history, if you ask me. And then you get Wu, and now you got Brash coming back with Munoz and Santos. I mean, this team has some potential, and that's why the frustration is at an ultimate high about getting that bat or getting a couple bats in here, because we know that the staff is set, barring any unseen injuries.
Yeah, so that's enough Mariners, I feel like, for now.
All right.
Opening day, a month from Thursday. Can you?
And I just want to say congratulations to Ichiro for being named into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
And we're definitely going to talk about him more when the induction comes this summer. He's having his jersey retired in August. That's going to be an awesome weekend at T-Mobile Park.
Got to put some respect on his name.
Absolutely. So let's switch gears to the other team sort of starting their season, the Seattle Sounders. They won their opening season match, not their regular season opener, but their opening season match in Guatemala against Antigua in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Great result. I felt like they didn't really play particularly well, but they get the 3-1 win in the first leg of a two-leg aggregate round. Then Saturday, the regular season opener, much anticipated at Lumen Field with the new additions, Jesus Ferreira, Paul Arriola, and they dominated that game, right, D-Jack? I mean, and they were up 2-1, couldn't get the third goal. They give up an own goal here. I can play some of the unfortunate highlights for you right here. Georgie Manugo, great cross to Jordan Morris. We're going to talk about him more. Jordan Morris with the brace as well, played incredible. The offense looked so good at Lumen Field, and that's what you were hoping to see improve from last season, right? And they just couldn't get the third goal, and then a bad Jackson Reagan giveaway and an own goal from Ian Margaret.
Now, my problem with that is 2-1, and we couldn't get the third goal. Now, no matter how good the offense looked, it was the same old story. from the last few years with the Sounders. They couldn't get that third score to seal the deal, and it ended up costing them. Now, I joked about they did get the third goal. It just didn't count for the Sounders, you know.
Not the third goal that we wanted.
Yeah, it's not the third goal that you wanted. Now, I wanted to make a point about the defense. Now, I'm all with the attacking style. That's what I love about this team. It looks great so far. However, with 5 minutes of stoppage time, you have to fall back. You have to fall back into your defense. I mean, that's soccer 101, and I'm not even an expert at soccer. I mean, you've got to fall back. So I think that was a strategic problem right there, more than a player problem making one mistake. There should have been more players back to defend with 5 minutes stoppage time. You're protecting a 2-1 lead. That's supposed to be a win. And I mean, Charlotte, they couldn't wait to get on the plane to get out of here. They were doing jumping jacks. They was jumping for joy that they was able to leave here with a point. So with that being said, Sounders, you got to know when to attack and when to go back into your defense. And I'm sure Brian Schmetzer, he'll fix it. I think he's a great coach.
Yeah, and he was talking about it after the game. It sucks because that one moment at the end of the game sort of takes all the narrative away from all the good that they did. They looked incredible offensively, and Brian was sort of.
But looks, I mean, you say they looked incredible, but they only had 2 goals. You gotta put the goal in the back of the net. You just have to. You can pass all you want, you can attack all you want. If you don't put the goal in the net, it's all for naught. And it came back to haunt them when we got the on goal, when Yeimar gets the on goal. So I love the look of it. I like the premise, but we have to execute a little bit better. You have to get that third goal. We need to put more goals into the net to be more successful, because at the end of the day, it's just window dressing if you're not sealing the deal.
Well, and we talk about the Mariners having a small margin for error when the offense isn't performing for the Sounders, also a small margin for error defending a 1-goal lead as opposed to a 2 or 3-goal lead. Brian Schmetzer, very obviously and justifiably upset after the game when he was speaking to the media. He sort of explained why he was so upset and a little bit short with, a little tense with some of his answers.
Those 2 players will be
excuse me. Wrong video. Here's Brian.
I'm a little bit hot right now because I think what we did well tonight, even on short rest, was very good. Some of the attacking movements, the combination play, all of that stuff was exciting soccer. And so we worked really hard on our attacking movements in preseason. We scored 2. We should have scored more. But the team, I believe, is a very good, exciting team. And so that's why I'm a little bit sour right now on the questions.
So obviously some frustration. I do think, all things considered, obviously disappointing result for the Sounders. There were a lot of promising takeaways, especially in that final third. And it's a game where you sat Jesus Ferreira, a game where you sat Pedro de la Vega, a game where you sat Paul Arriola. Like, those are the guys that you're hoping to make impact this season. Those guys didn't play, and they looked very dynamic offensively, I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, their depth, the Sounders definitely, and I guess the question to you is, do they have enough depth for this schedule? I mean, this is a brutal schedule to start the season, but let me go back
4 games in 10 days to start the season.
Let me go back to Schmetzer, because I'm kind of disappointed in him. I'll be honest. I mean, you don't get what you deserve in this league. You get what you earn.
Absolutely.
And Charlotte earned a tie. They earned a draw. And so did the Sounders by making those brutal mistakes at the end. So, Schmetzer, we can do a better job of getting back on defense in stoppage time and stopping Charlotte. And you won't have that on goal. You won't have that one mistake that leads to that runoff. So, you get what you earn, not what you deserve. He talks like they deserve to win. Well, deserve don't get you a win. You have to earn that win, and Schmetzer knows that.
I think what's frustrating and why Schmetzer's frustrated is they played good enough to get a win. Not that they earned it. At the end of the day, they didn't, but they played well enough to where they should have gotten the 3 points. I think they had control of that game right until that Jackson Reagan giveaway. At the end of the day, you can't give the ball away there. Did the offense hang the defense out to dry? The margin of error is slim, like we mentioned. You can't even make one mistake when you have a 1-goal lead, right? It's tough. It's disappointing. Those are the 2 of the best defenders in the league. Yeimar and Jackson Reagan was a Defender of the Year finalist. And, ultimately, I'm sure they feel like the game was lost on them, but you got to get that third goal. And I will say, despite the result, very encouraged with how the Sounders played. With the rotation as well, Brian mentioned, on short rest, they came out and they took it to Charlotte in that first game, specifically offensively, a department that they struggled mightily last year.
And this is something they're going to have to do. They're going to have to play their whole team. With the schedule, with all the tournaments this year that the Sounders are in, with the MLS schedule, they're going to have to play a bunch of their players. So it's no excuses here. Whether it's your second team, your first team, you're still tweaking, you're still working it out. This is your team. So that Sounders squad that we put out there on Saturday should go and test Charlotte, should go and win that match. So I firmly believe that it's going to be a full team effort this year, more than ever, with these outside tournaments and the MLS schedule included.
Well, and you mentioned the depth. That game was a great display of the depth. You had Paul Rothrock starting on the left, Georgie Manungu starting on the right, sort of up top with Jordan Morris.
And I like Georgie, too. Let me say that.
Oh, man, he is dynamic.
Yes. Yeah, I like the way he looked. Yes.
Yeah. So you saw a lot of great things, and those guys are coming off the bench in a full-strength squad. So you didn't have Pedro de la Vega. You didn't have Jesus Ferreira. And you were still able to be incredibly dynamic offensively, better than you played in Antigua. And, granted, that's on the road in Guatemala. Going on the road and getting a win in CONCACAF is incredibly difficult.
Yes.
I think, I don't remember the exact stat, but very limited wins for the Sounders on the road in CONCACAF games. So that was a really good result that you saw. They didn't play their best, and they play better at home in the MLS regular season. They don't get the results. Sometimes that's just football.
You just can't have that letdown after beating Antigua. You got to come home and protect your home turf and go ahead and get that win against Charlotte FC.
And that's the frustrating part because of the slow start last year. You wanted to start out fast with all the fixture congestion, and you just can't get it done.
With all that being said, the sky is not falling. It was a draw.
No, absolutely.
You did get a point out of it. It's not a loss. Hopefully Wednesday they'll look a lot better, and we'll see what lineup that they roll out there, because I'm curious to see how Smetzer handles this roster. I think this will be a test of his coaching this year. To manage the egos, to manage the roster. You've got players that's on the bench that earned the playing time. Like Georgie, he looks great. He's supposed to be in the game. So, João Paulo, he didn't play, on Saturday. So you got players that you can put in there. So I'm curious to see Smetzer and how he handles this roster. I do not envy him. He has a tough job this year.
And yeah, absolutely. And luckily with the work that they did on Wednesday in Guatemala against Antigua, it opens up some options. They got the stoppage time goal to make it 3-1. That's the tiebreaker, is road goals for this CONCACAF Champions Cup.
But don't overlook Antigua.
Absolutely.
When you're the Sounders, you cannot overlook anyone.
What it allows them to do, Albert Rusnak did not start that Antigua game. He's sort of coming back from a quad injury. Luckily, he was able to get 80 minutes or so against Charlotte. That's a good thing for his injury status. But you don't need to really go out there and risk him for a full 90 at home. You can sort of, maybe you play João Paulo and play more defensively and pack it in a little bit. You've got the offensive option if you need it at the end of the game. It just sort of frees Brian Schmetzer up to do whatever formation, whatever combination of starters that he wants with the depth that you mentioned. That's how deep they are. They can play an offensive lineup with Jesus Ferreira, Paul Arriola on the left, sort of playing a left wing back. You can play Pedro. He can come inside, play center attacking mid, or play out in the wing. Rusnak can play deeper down, as a center defensive mid, but getting more forward when they have the ball. There's so many options with this team.
There's a plethora of ways he can do this lineup,
depending on what they need. If
and the alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. If they'd lost 2-0 at Antigua, the lineup would be a lot different than if they'd won 3-1. So a lot of options. He can rest the players that he needs to.
Let me ask you this, though. We talked about the Mariners X Factor. Who's your Sounders X Factor?
There's a couple. So, Jesus Ferreira's a big one. He's coming in. He's your main offseason signing, so everyone's going to be looking to him. In my opinion, the most important player to the success of this Sounders season, Pedro de la Vega, and I don't want to say it's not close, but it's him by a significant margin. you brought him in, last season, $7.5 million transfer fee, the most in franchise history.
Yes.
That's significant. And I know you like to talk about, the Sounders not having a superstar. Pedro de la Vega is supposed to be your superstar. I know he's young. He's early 20s, 22, 23. So he's sort of going to grow into that player, ideally. Well, last season, you basically didn't have him. You had a shell of himself. He was on the sidelines all year injured, with his hamstring problems, and that stuff can linger.
Yes.
Hoping that this offseason you can sort of put that behind him. But, if Pedro de la Vega is going, that's a DP signing right there that you didn't really have last season, on top of Jesus Ferreira, who's not a DP, but you essentially is. He's coming off an 18-goal season in 2022. That would have led the squad last year. So there's a lot to be excited about the Sounders team, specifically with Pedro de la Vega scoring that goal
And
against
by all
Antigua.
accounts, I mean, he's healthy as ever. He's as fast as ever. They love the way he looks. He didn't play on Saturday. I would love to see him out there a little bit more often. Maybe they're kind of like,
I would have to guess they're being cautious
taking
with
it
him,
slow, being cautious
especially
with him.
hamstrings.
But I want to see you out there, De La Vega. I want you to demand to be on that pitch. We need you out there. We need all the stars we can get out there. With Jordan Morris out there, he scored 2 goals, Morris. And congratulations to Jordan Morris also for becoming the club's all-time leader in contest goals.
Tied with Rui Diaz now.
Tied with Rui Diaz, my guy. Congratulations to him, but he needs some help. And that goes back to my point of putting the ball in the back of the net. I mean, Jordan Morris, he scores out only 2 goals, and he had a good chance to score more than that.
Mm-hmm.
I would love more people out there, more players out there with the threat of scoring. I would love De La Vega out there.
Well, so the benefit of the depth, and then we'll move on after this point, but the benefit of the depth is you don't have to have Pedro de la Vega out there playing 4 games in 10 days to start the year after an injury-riddled season.
Right.
You can put Georgie Manu go out there and he's still going to be productive. He had the great cross to Jordan Morris for the first goal.
Yes.
So you've got options to where you can be flexible and manage this team so that they're good for the long haul. This game on Wednesday is important against Antigua. These competitions are important, but you can keep that long-distance goal in mind of we also want to be at our best in the MLS playoffs when we're competing for another MLS Cup.
Now, do you feel like the Sounders are good enough right now to be contenders for the Cup?
Absolutely. I think so.
Where do you put them at in the Western Conference?
I think easily we're one of the top 3 teams with LAFC, with the LA Galaxy. The Galaxy lost some guys. Ricky Puig tore his ACL in that Sounders game. He actually, that assist that downed the Sounders, he did that on a torn ACL, which is pretty crazy.
Wow.
He's going to be out for the season. Joveljic is gone, their striker. I think Paint Hill is injured right now, so they're sort of figuring things out. LAFC is always going to be there, but the Sounders, they proved that the Sounders played well against Galaxy in the regular season. Were right there on the road against the Galaxy. They beat LAFC on the road, sort of got the monkey off their back, broke that 10-game losing streak or whatever it was. So the Sounders are right there. They can compete. I think Jesus Ferreira is a big addition, and having Pedro de la Vega for the entire season, hopefully healthy, and you saw the start that he got off to against Antigua.
Yes.
Having a confident, healthy Pedro de la Vega is going to turn this team into an MLS Cup contender this year.
Okay. All right.
So, but let's move on. I mean, you mentioned Jordan Morris and how he needs help. Let's enter Dante's Inferno.
Yes.
DJ, you love a hot take, right?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if it's a hot take. But I just wanted to ask a question. It's more of a question out there. And the question is first of all, do the Sounders have enough? Now, you believe they're Western Conference, at least MLS Cup contenders. I beg to differ. I think they need a little bit more. But with that being said, I am big into star power. And I just wanted to, goes as a reminder to the Sounders of who they are. Sounders, you are a pillar in the MLS. You are a gold standard franchise. I want stars. I don't want to compete. I want championships as a fan. You have some of the greatest fans in the world here in Seattle that supports this team. I've been to plenty of Sounders matches, and they're screaming their heads out, they're chanting, they're banging on drums. You can barely hear when you're in there. So you have the support. I want star power. What happened to the days where you go snatch an international star? Now, you say that's De La Vega. Okay, he was hurt last year. I get it. But the Sounders, I just want to remind you, you are a gold standard. Bring the star power in. When did the philosophy change from bringing that star power in to going homegrown? It seems that has been the philosophy the last couple of years. I don't like it. Get back to being a powerhouse in the MLS and take our rightful place as number one in this league.
And the question that you wanted to raise was about Jordan Morris, right?
Is he a star? Is he a superstar?
And
now,
I'm assuming you say no.
I think he's a great sounder. Don't get me wrong. He's a great player. But when you compare him to the other stars in the MLS, how does he match up? I would be curious to see what the league thinks about Jordan Morris. Now, like I said, he just tied Rui Diaz for the most goals in club history. So who am I to say? But at the same time, how does he match up? Is he a matchup problem? Do he strike fear into the other clubs? Do they game plan for him? I don't know the answers to those questions. I think he needs help. So it's not an indictment on Jordan Morris. It's more about the club. Get Jordan Morris some help. Bring in some more stars.
Now, to answer your question, is Jordan Morris a superstar? I would say no, but he is a star.
Okay.
And I think there's a couple of different ways to build your roster. Do you build it with one superstar and try to supplement based on their play style, or do you have, more great players, sort of a level below, but you raise the floor of your, 1 through 11, 1 through 15. Exactly. And I'd make the argument that's what the Sounders did this season. I think last season they didn't have enough talent. They were not deep enough. Paul Rothrock was starting games on the left wing, and Paul was incredible. Paul was great. He's Aaron Levine's favorite player. And he had a stat, the Sounders record when Paul Rothrock started, and it was incredible. But, I think Paul, in the role that he's going to play this year, is absolutely perfect and speaks to the depth of this team. Him coming off the bench as a super sub in the 60th minute, providing rotational flexibility when needed with the fixture congestion, 4 games in 10 days. This team, top to bottom, is solid, is going to compete
and that's
lineup they run out there.
And that's what bothers me, Ethan. You just described them as solid.
The entire team. Exactly. There are no holes on this team.
We are the Seattle Sounders. I want to be dynamic. I want to be great. I want to be champions.
Pedro de la Vega.
Every year.
Georgie Manungu.
Every year.
Jesus Ferreira. Those are all dynamic players.
You have to be in the mix every year. You can't just be solid. And you can't be just good enough, but not good enough. And that's the vibe I'm getting with the philosophy of the Sounders. No, I want to go for it every year. And that goes for every franchise in Seattle right now. You can paint the broad stroke across the Mariners, the Seahawks, the Storm, the Sounders. They're all good enough, but not good enough. They're right there. They say they want consistent winners. No, I want consistent champions. That's what this fan base deserves. In each of those sports I just named, we have the best fan base in that league. The fans have earned a championship, and they've earned the right to expect one every year.
Absolutely. I would say last year's team, they did not have that depth, and that's why it didn't work at the end of the day. They didn't have the versatile offensive pieces, and that's why they were sort of stagnant up there. I feel like with the addition of Jesus Ferreira, which you're not paying him DP money, but he is a DP. Like, he is a national team player. He's 25-year-old starting for the U.S. national team. Paul Arriola, national team experience. So you're bringing in solid guys. You know what you're getting. Did you spend $10 million on Olivier Giroud or Marco Reus? No. I don't think that's realistic with what this ownership group is doing. Would I love a Olivier Giroud? Absolutely. I don't know if he would fit in this team. Jordan Morris last year.
You find a way to fit somebody like that in.
Absolutely.
You find a way.
Jordan Morris proved last year that he can handle being a starting striker in the MLS. And a very, very good one at that. You supplement that with Pedro de la Vega, who could potentially be that superstar that you want. The biggest transfer fee in all of Seattle Sounders history right there. Pedro de la Vega. We have him. He's 23-year-old.
So you're saying the stars are here?
I think they're here. And
Okay.
that's why Pedro de la Vega, going back to that, is my X factor. He needs to turn into that star. You know, do I need him to be a superstar this year in year 2 as a 23-year-old? No, I think that's a little bit unrealistic, too lofty, I would say. But he needs to be a star this year, or, you know, I think the floor for this team is a conference final appearance. Pedro de la Vega turns them into an MLS Cup winner, in my opinion.
All right.
So, all right. I think that you got anything else you want to tell the people
No.
before we get out of here?
Hey, just make sure you download the Fox Local app.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's going to do it for this On the Sidelines podcast. Our first episode. We're going to be coming at you once a week on all of Fox 13's platforms. So check us out on YouTube. If you want to listen to us in the car, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you want. The Fox Local app. Download that on your smart TV. Wherever you get your podcast, we're going to be there. Yeah, we look forward to you all joining us on this journey talking Seattle sports. It's going to be fun. Until next time, we're going to see you next time on the sideline.
On the sideline. Let's go.